This is The Future Of, where experts share their vision of the future and how their work is helping shape it for the better. I'm David Karsten.
And I'm Celeste Fourie.
Every day, AI becomes a bigger part of our lives, shaping the feeds we scroll, the way we write emails, and even the music we listen to. But how does this technology fit into classrooms? Well, with nearly 80% of Australian students already using generative AI tools like ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot, the way we learn is changing, whether we're ready or not.
In this episode, we were joined by Alex Jenkins, Director of the WA Data Science Innovation Hub and Artificial Intelligence Specialist. We discussed what to expect in education when AI becomes a cornerstone of the classroom, risks of AI use like cognitive offloading, and advice for students and educators using these tools. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, you can visit the links in the show notes. Alex, you've worked in the technology space for more than 15 years. When did you first realise Gen AI had the potential to change the way we create, share, and build knowledge?
Wow, what a great question. Easy one to start off with.
Testing you.
Yeah, so I've been paying attention to what was happening in neural networks for a very, very long time. And there was a breakthrough in something called deep learning around 2011, 2012, where people have been experimenting with this early version of AI called neural networks. And they've been around for a long time, but it was only around the early 2010s that we started to get the technology to really be able to run these things at scale.
Neural networks. You might have to just refresh us on that one there, Alex.
Yeah, so a neural network is a type of software that is designed to emulate at a very simple level how the brain works. And it's a different way of running computer software. There are things that humans have always been good at, like handwriting recognition, that are very, very difficult for computers. And understanding the intent of language. Computers have sucked at it for 70 years. We've been trying to get them to do that for 70 years, and it's always been a horrible failure. But neural networks have been around for a long time, and we started to get the computing power to grow them and grow them and grow them. And over the next 10 years, these things became more capable in terms of being able to do human-like tasks, like image recognition, transcribing audio into text, and then finally, in sort of 2022, 2023, what we call GPTs. And these are big brains that hoover up, electronic brains that hoover up all of the information across the web. And they started to show the characteristics of being able to understand language and answer questions and even learn. And obviously, the big release of ChatGPT, I knew at that moment, my goodness, this is now the time that AI has gone from this weird, niche research area to something that's going to explode into the popular world. It's an incredible time with this technology. And the question is now, what do we do with it?
Well, even in 2018, when your organisation kicked off, it was estimated at the time that the economic impact here in WA alone of disruptive digital internet and internet technologies was forecasted to be $25 billion by this year.
Yeah.
How far off was that estimate, you reckon, since I guess the generative AI has really taken hold in the last couple of years?
It changes the estimate by an order of magnitude.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, so now we're talking sort of trillions of dollars globally, and sort of certainly many hundreds of billions of dollars for Australia. It's going to change industry in every sector in different ways, and I think it's going to the economic value might be slower to realise than a lot of people think, because it's not easy to integrate this technology into organisations. And if AI stopped right now in terms of this is as far as it got, I think it would still take us years to actually integrate that kind of smarts into our current systems and ways of working. Yeah.
One area that it's really integrating quickly and adapting and the take-up has been quite remarkable is within the education sector.
Yeah.
How is the sector being disrupted by AI, in your opinion, and where do you see it taking our classrooms by, say, 2035?
Yeah, so this is my big thing and the thing that I'm most excited about. I did a TEDx talk in 2023 called An AI Tutor for Every Child. And I'm a big fan, I have been for years, of Sal Khan and the Khan Academy. They're the world's largest educational nonprofit. And throughout the 2010s and 2020s, the Khan Academy have created essentially online class modules for students to work through. But they set it all up and it's all free for anyone to use anywhere around the world. It's a very democratic way of sharing education. And Sal Khan, the founder of this, his big thing was a concept called mastery learning. And the idea with mastery learning is that if you think about how a normal classroom works, right? Let's say we're studying maths. We go into a classroom, we learn about fractions for 3 weeks, and then we move on to number properties or something else. And the whole class has to start fractions at the same time and end fractions at the same time. And then we all move on to the next topic. But the reality is that students do not learn at the same rate. Everyone learns at their own time. And particularly in areas like mathematics, what you see is that students don't gain complete mastery over topics. And over time, their confidence to learn new things, it's like building a house on dodgy foundations, really diminishes. And a lot of students end up saying, I can't do maths. And they internalize it.
Are we? This is very personal to me, Alex. Are you talking about me right
Well,
now and my primary / high school experience?
It's
quite triggering, actually. I think I need a moment, Celeste.
I'll give you that moment. It's absolutely universal, and it's a failure of our education systems for a long time, that we haven't had the capability to let students learn at their own rate. And this idea of the classroom dates back to the Industrial Revolution. This idea of a sort of a single teacher in a classroom of about 30 kids, it's a really old idea. And we haven't updated it very, very often. And we do know that when we tutor kids, so I used to tutor kids when I was at university, tutor high school kids in maths. And when you tutor someone one-on-one, their performance goes up significantly. You can turn a good student into an excellent student. You can turn a failing student into a good student. And this idea of one-on-one tutoring, prior to AI, we never had the ability to say to a classroom, let's go in and give every child a tutor to work for. You know, as a society, we don't value education in that way, that every student has a tutor. However, when AI came about, it became quickly apparent that AI was capable of explaining things and re-explaining things and never losing patience and working through problems with you. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a technology we can deploy at scale that will know each student's strengths and weaknesses, how they like to learn. And we can use this to tutor kids, make sure that they understand something before they go on to the next topic. And we do know that when you allow students, particularly in lower and secondary school, to really master the topics they're working on, that they do so much better. So my hope is that we can deploy this at scale, and by 2035, we have a version of ChatGPT on our computer or on our iPad that essentially is our personal tutor and works with us to guide us on our educational journey.
I wish I had that when I was in school, because
So do
when I was doing my maths homework and preparing for exams, I had a tutor because I couldn't always keep up to where my classmates were at. So if I had this back then, I think it would have been amazing. When I'm specifically talking sort of about an AI tool, would I have been able to take like a picture of a maths equation and put that in the AI model and they'd be able to solve that for me?
Yeah, so the models today are good enough to do that.
So they can't analyze image.
Yep, absolutely. They can look at an image, and the best example of it, I'll share a link with your audience as well, is where you actually share the screen on an iPad, and so kids can work through a problem. There's a really great demo of it from OpenAI where Sal Khan's son works through a trigonometry problem with an AI, and so to have that more interactive and handwritten experience is much better than just, typing answers back and forth. Yeah.
Do you think AI will eventually change what we teach, not just how we teach it?
Yeah, I do. For an interesting reason. I think if you look at education, if you zoom out and you look at education over the last few hundred years, not just the last few years, but the last few hundred, our expectations of what people will learn has changed dramatically. It used to be the case that only very rich people and the elite had tutors or anything resembling a sort of modern schooling. For a long time, most people were considered too stupid to read. I mean, we actually considered people too dumb to read. There are many parts of the world now where women are still not educated to the same level as men. In terms of what we expect, a school leaver to understand, that has changed over the years significantly. And in the past, it's always been based on this historical context. So, I think this idea that, we leave school and we have some basic understanding of, algebra and can write an essay, these are somewhat arbitrary standards. It's going to be really interesting to see how we can push it forward with artificial intelligence. I mean, there are parts of the world, for instance, where they leave high school with a greater understanding of maths than they do in Australia. And it's going to be interesting to see what this technology can do in terms of pushing educational standards forward.
Well, let's talk about leaving school and diving into tertiary education. And look, you're based here at Curtin,
yep.
and so this is really current. And within this context, we're actually seeing the effects of generative AI on policy here at Curtin, and questions about where it can be used in academic research,
yep.
in student research for assignments. How do you see it taking shape? What's the status at the moment, and where's it going? I know this is so layered, Alex, but
yeah, it is.
Let's start at student level and then go to academic.
Yeah, so with students, obviously the biggest challenge to begin with is, my goodness, how on earth do we assess our students? I used to be able to give my students an essay on the history of World War II, give them 2 weeks to, do that essay and then mark them on that essay. And now we live in a world where ChatGPT can create that essay in 30 seconds. Right, to a very high quality. And so universities all around the world, Curtin included, started using tools like Turnitin to say, okay, well, let's try and detect the AI content. Now, the problem with that is it's a bit like an arms race. It's not these tools are never 100% reliable. They are trained on human text to emulate human text. You get students accused of cheating who haven't cheated. You get students who have cheated who will slip past the net. It's quite easy with these AI detectors to, tweak a few words here and there, and it will change its confidence in if the essay has been AI generated. So that assessment piece has been a real challenge for high schoolers and for in the tertiary space for since the introduction of ChatGPT. And it requires a reflection and an examination about how we look at assessment. And of course, Curtin is running a program called Assessment 2030. Molly does a great job with that, and that is to answer these questions. Well, what is it that we want our students to take away from the university and have the skills to go into the workforce, and how can we re-examine how we examine that knowledge? Some things that are happening now, the return of oral examinations, but ultimately I think it has to come down to a change in assessment techniques, because the technology is not going away and you're going to use it in the workforce as well.
It's such a loaded question, really, isn't it? It's being used in the workforce, it's being used widely, yet in a tertiary education setting, it's almost down to a personal choice as to, at the moment, as to how much value you want to draw from your education experience as a student, really, isn't it? As the guardrails are being composed and policy is being implemented. It really is a personal question, isn't it? Well, how much do I want to get out of this degree that is me generating this work, or other sources perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be, there is certainly an onus on the students to take responsibility and say, okay, am I going to do this properly, or am I going to, maybe bend the rules or outright break the rules and cheat? But I think we need to look past that, because at the moment it sort of becomes an option for the students. And I think that we need to train students how to use AI to help them learn things, rather than use it as, there's a term called cognitive offloading, which is a fancy way of saying, You just essentially get the AI to do the thinking for you. And I mean, my spelling has gotten worse since the age of Google and spell checkers. My navigational skills have gotten worse.
Oh, yeah.
With Google Maps.
Reading a map, yeah.
We don't want our critical thinking facilities offloaded to artificial intelligence. And so we need to structure our courses in such a way that the students are leaving with the skills and learning is taking place with the use of AI.
So, Alex, you're saying 2030, is that when we're going to see, I guess, a workable policy? Or?
Oh, no, I think we'll see something well beyond that. That's just the name of the program that's running across the university. Assessment 2030. It's a review of all kinds of assessment, yeah. What I'd also love to see is I'd love to see exams which are slightly different. Imagine coming into an exam hall and you sit down in front of a computer that the university's provided and the AI examines you. I was just reading a paper this morning where people were testing whether AI could grade papers, law student papers at the same level as a law professor. And in certain cases it can. So the technology is moving in that direction. So we should make use of it. I mean, if you have an AI set up that is designed to test your knowledge and your understanding, that's a new form of assessment that I don't think anyone's experimented with yet.
Talking about cognitive offloading, what are some of the consequences that do come with this over-reliance on AI?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I get emails sometimes from people and they send me a report that they've created. And it's clearly all just straight out of ChatGPT, copy and paste. And it'll be 17 pages long. And I look at it and I think, well, what's the point of this? What are you trying to communicate? And I don't think AI will replace those important interpersonal skills, the communication skills. And I think that the ability to formulate an argument and critically think about things, that's what we're here at university to do. To lose that to AI, I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen the film Idiocracy. It's a bit old now, but yeah, I mean, that's the worst case scenario. I don't think people will, just rely on AI for everything, but it will be very tempting to sort of hand off that critical thinking ability. And that's not a world that we want to live in.
Idiocracy. That is a frightening glimpse
into
into what's possible. Yeah. Look, on the other side of all of this, the tech companies, Alex, that are creating these generative AI programs that and their interests, are, well, they've got to be purely financial.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
How do we? Is there ever going to be such thing as ethical AI that prioritises students and educators rather than just the act of engagement and mining data?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a big problem. The incentives of the companies that provide this technology are not necessarily aligned with the incentives of a university or the interests of a student. There are certainly, software specific things. I mean, one thing that you can do if you're using ChatGPT is there's a study and learn mode. And I think that Google Gemini has the same study and learn mode. And if it doesn't have those modes, you can even, again, you have to have the discipline to do this as a student, go in there and say, look, I'm here to learn about this. If I ask for help, don't give me the answer, just set me in the right direction. So you can do those things. But yeah, at the fundamental level, there's an incentive misalignment from the big corporate players. So, one of the things that we can do is have education-specific AIs. We can have Australia-specific artificial intelligences. I think that the future, the best possible future, or let me start with the worst possible future. The worst possible future is that some one or two mega companies based in the United States end up essentially defining the ethics of what AI should do. Because if they have the best AI model and everyone wants to use it and they decide what's acceptable for it and how it should behave.
It sounds kind of familiar.
Well, that's the path.
Is that where we're going?
I mean, that's sort of where we're at, right?
Yeah.
I mean, OpenAI, for instance, I think they do a reasonable job of, defining what it is that an AI shouldn't and shouldn't say. But sometimes they get it wrong. And also the idea that they should be making that decision, I think, is not a good one. I'm a big proponent of what we call open source AI, which is models that are released for free for people to modify and change. And the worst case scenario is 1 or 2 megacorps. The best case scenario is that we have fields of dozens of different AI models that we can choose from, that we can tailor to our own standards, and that the ethical standards of AI come from our community and our government, essentially allowing Australians to make a decision about what goes into AI here. So, yeah, it's a future that could go either way, definitely.
Alex, at a tertiary education level, is the sector looking at option B as a possibility to pursue in terms of not retrofitting, but taking an open source AI model and modelling it in a way that suits tertiary education and the ethics that the sector seeks to uphold?
Well, they've done things like that in New South Wales. So they've got a chatbot there which is available to both students and teachers, which doesn't actually use open source AI in the background, I believe. I think it uses proprietary AI. However, they have tuned it to make sure it's specific to their curriculum and their standards and what it's acceptable for a student to have a chat about with. And so that's something where New South Wales is really ahead of the game. In WA, they are building something, Classmate, which is a sort of AI for teachers at the moment, to generate lesson plans, help save teachers time. And again, that's very, very, a large part of that work is ensuring it aligns with curriculum and ethical standards that we want for West Australian students, yeah. So there's a bit of work there to be done. And I think that we could move faster in Australia across that stuff for sure.
With these tech companies and new AI tools coming in, who do you think is the most vulnerable?
Well, again, it comes down to what our future of AI looks like. I mean, so let's stick to this 2030 date. By 2030, I think that our mobile phones will have some version of a mobile phone or watch that is essentially our personal assistant. And, the utopia, the sort of way this could all go right, is that it monitors what we do during the day and, books restaurants for us, books doctor's appointments, sits down with us when we need to do some work and, knows exactly how we like to learn and really acts as like our own personal assistant that runs around with us all day and just makes our life easier. I think that'd be fantastic. We're not very far away from something like that. The worst case scenario is some kind of amplification of the problems that social media already have. So you have things like echo chambering in social media where people are pushed into extremist viewpoints, and then their entire social media feed is populated with other people who also have the same extremist viewpoint, and that becomes their whole world, and it becomes very divisive for the whole community. You see it a lot with young men as well. It's something they get drawn into. Sort of an AI version of that would be horrific, because if we're all consuming AI content, these things are like TikTok, right? TikTok, it's a bit like a poker machine, like a gambling machine. You get this little dopamine squirt, and these things are so short, and the algorithms are so good at determining what it is you like that they will just, customize your feed, and you get this constant dopamine hit. And soon a lot of those videos will be AI generated as well. So we could just sort of, turn into this sort of sea of consumption where we're just all consumed by what's on our screens in a way that just keeps us engaged. I think that would be a horrible, horrible future.
Alex, you've talked about algorithmic biases as an equity risk, but what about access gaps? Is that also a potential vulnerability in the future?
The interesting thing is this incredibly powerful and, intelligent technology, its cost is getting lower and lower. It's becoming a commodity, and but there's still that fundamental underlying cost of the access to an iPhone, an iPad, and of course a reliable internet connection. And as this technology progresses, it'll become more multimodal. You'll have a conversation with it, and that requires more internet bandwidth. It'll stream video to you, but also look at your screen and stream video from what you're looking at. There's already some sunglasses that have sort of AI cameras built into them.
So weird. Anyway.
Do you remember Glass holes from Google Glass? People used to have these camera-enabled glasses ripped off their faces when they went out in public.
Oh, really? Because they're quite identifiable.
Well, because people didn't want to be filmed in public. But this is about 15 years ago. And I think the world has changed since then. I'm not sure for the better. But when this technology, well, it wasn't quite as advanced as this, but when this was tried about 15 years ago by Google, with Google Glass, it was really rejected by the society. And I don't think that would happen at the moment. So to answer your question more directly, I think that the accessibility, even though the fundamental technology is cheap, it's going to be the hardware around it, which is still an issue. We don't want some kids using ChatGPT or an AI to help them and others not. I see in the education system already that the independent schools are well ahead. The use of AI, they've taken it in all kinds of different directions. I mean, the government schools obviously have to move somewhat in unison with this, but there's a severe a disparity between, for instance, what happens in metropolitan Perth versus the regional areas.
And that unfortunately has always been the case, really.
It has, So AI stands to suffer from those same problems.
How are Australian schools and universities responding to AI? How do you see these policies and rules evolving over the next decade?
Yeah, so if we go back to ChatGPT, the initial response is like, oh my goodness, what on earth are we going to do about this? So there's that sort of, and it's the same in schools. The education department, first thing they did was ban it. But that is not a long-term approach. And so you see this evolution towards, all right, testing to see whether we can reliably test whether something is AI generated or not. And again, that's a difficult place to be in. It's filled with problems. And so then it becomes, all right, we need to change the way that we assess people's, children's and students' understanding of things. And that is something that is going to take a long time because, a complete upheaval of assessment processes that might not have changed for 30 years is a big deal. And it's the same problem in schools and in universities. So, yeah, I see this trajectory where there's, it's like denial and fear versus acceptance and then embracing. And it's going to take a few years to get there, I think. Yeah.
We're at a pretty sort of critical point, sort of the coalface of a lot of change, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Alex, you're right there. You're right there, as well as being the director of the WA Data Science Innovation Hub. You're on the WA Department of Health's AI Oversight Committee. You're on the WA Department of Education's Generative AI Advisory Group, and also the Department of Premier and Cabinet's AI Advisory Board.
Yeah.
So you've got this amazing sort of overview of how AI is being integrated at different levels within society, and having a say. Well, we're going to listen very carefully as you tell us once and for all at this juncture what your advice would be to high school and university students on using AI responsibly, but also effectively here and now.
My advice to students is to learn how to use artificial intelligence in such a way that you are not relying on it for the answer, but that it helps you understand things. Even say to it, I am working on this problem. I need to understand how to do it. Don't tell me the answer. Help guide me towards the correct method. That's really important. It's as simple as that, so that you treat the AI, the relationship you have with the AI, as more of a tutor rather than someone who just gives you the answer. And that's a very simple thing that you can just say to the AI, and it will change the way in how it responds. It will respect those sort of rules. I would strongly advise students as well that when AI says something, ask it for its source.
Yeah.
Okay, so AI still sometimes hallucinate. They still sometimes make things up, just like people do.
Yep.
And particularly in an academic setting, we don't in science, we don't accept, well, I reckon that 1 + 1 = 3. You need to back that up. You need to back it up with data. And so always ask the AI for its links, for sources, and for where it says something might be true, and dig into the primary source. That is an important skill in education and learning anyway, and it will ensure that you're not misled by the AI. So those are my 2 top tips. Yeah.
And for educators, how can they build confidence with AI and use it to strengthen their practice?
Yeah, I think it comes down to experimenting with AI and seeing what it does do well and doesn't do well. Don't be scared to have a go. And again, treat the output of AI as though it's an untrusted individual. And if it makes a claim that you're a bit dubious about, ask it where it got its data from. What makes you think that this is true? Educators can really benefit from the use of AI. I mean, you can, let's say you have a lesson plan for your class, but you've got a child in your class with special needs, or maybe someone on the autism spectrum, they love trains. You can say, take this lesson plan and let's make it about trains, or let's make it about soccer players, whatever their interest might be. And in fact, the Autism Academy won a grant on a large grant from the Department of Communities, and Wadsey was a partner in that, to help build out generative AI activities for neurodiverse students. And so there's a lot, and those are really fun. And we just had a State of AI forum here at Curtin as well, run by the Fogarty Foundation and Beyond Boundaries Foundation, where we delivered a sort of a half-day presentation on some of those activities. And it was great to see the teachers picking them up and learning how to, take AI and really run with it. And there's all kinds of classroom activities like, let's ask the same question to 2 artificial intelligence models from different regions, one from the United States, one from China, and see how it responds differently.
How interesting.
And why would it respond differently? Because these things are a product of our society. They're a reflection of our writings and communications and ethical standards.
They bring with them their own context,
yes,
right?
Yes, they do. And so understanding that is just exactly as we did, 20 years ago when we would analyze a newspaper column in high school and try to understand the biases that might be associated with someone writing like that and the information that they put in or leave out. It's very important that we have some idea of, AI is not magic. It's a product that's been brought together in a context, be that a regional context or a political context, and it has certain standards that are defined by the community in those places. So understanding that's really important, I think.
You mentioned earlier that to have major decisions on ethics and policy being in the hands of the tech firms, being a less than desirable position to be in. Yeah. How do you see, and who do you see, ethics being in the hands of, ideally?
It's such a good question. I think.
Are we too late?
No, we're not too late. I think we need to handle it in the same way that we handle ethics with newspapers. I get asked a lot about AI and bias. How do we remove bias from AI? Right? And the thing is, if you ask that same question about a newspaper, how do we remove bias from a newspaper? There's not a single newspaper in the world that everyone agrees is without bias, right? Everyone brings their own perception and lens to a particular context. And the world will never completely agree on what is, this is our one standard of what is true and good. And the way that we solve that with newspapers are a great analogy for AI, by the way, because they are a collection of articles that are brought together and then sort of editorialized on top. And part of that editorial process is deciding how things are written, but also what information is included, and more importantly, what information is left out, right? So we don't try and strive for the single one newspaper that just tells us the truth. The answer is to have newspapers that are dotted all over the political spectrum. We have left wing, we have right wing, we have economically conservative, economically progressive, all kinds of political and spectrums here. And I think we need to do the same thing with artificial intelligence. Instead of this idea that we have one AI, the idea that we can use open source AI, take a copy of it that we can use for ourselves, and then tune it to work within the ethical framework that we want for whatever scenario that might be, an organizational scenario or an education scenario. I think that is the best thing that we can hope for, because the world is never going to agree on one set of what is right and what is true. And I think that we have that same issue with artificial intelligence. And so the solution is a world of different types of AIs that hold different opinions and represent different viewpoints. Yeah.
Do you see Australia maybe charting its own course in terms of AI policy in the future, or is it a global thing?
So the government has just released a national AI plan where they have said that they're not going to go forward with stringent guardrails on how AI can be used. I think that is probably the right approach at this point in time. I think it is better that there will be these risks with AI, but they are better handled via existing legal frameworks. And also the risks are going to be different if they're in, the automotive sector versus the pharmaceutical sector versus the educational sector. So I think that we're best off leaving these particular risks and issues to the various sectors as they come up. A lot of what goes wrong with AI can already be handled using existing legal frameworks. And my fear is if we had this sort of blanket AI policy that it would go out of date within 3 weeks of it being published, right? So I'm glad that the federal government has taken that approach. What the future holds, I'm not sure. As the AI models become smarter, it might become a different story. Maybe there's something there in terms of ensuring equitable access. I mean, it's feasible that one day we have a scenario where we consider the use of AI as fundamental as the rights to water and power and telecommunications, right? I mean, not many people could survive in the modern world without access to the internet or a smartphone right now,
That's
right?
true.
So I can see AI being a part of that progression.
Oh, Alex, this has just been fascinating, and for you, I mean, having been so close to this for a decade and a half, and just watching all of this unfold so rapidly and at such scale, how exciting has your career been over the last little while?
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. I think the most exciting thing for me has been able to work across different industries. The thing that I really get a buzz from is talking to people who aren't necessarily technical, and you see it all the time in health and medicine. And it turns out that their problem can be, approached with artificial intelligence. The most famous AI in the world, arguably the most useful one, is one called AlphaFold that solves a really fundamental biomedical research problem, which is protein folding. And the inventors of that got a Nobel Prize. And so the way that this technology can be applied in different industries is just really exciting to me. And I'm very lucky because that is my job, is to educate different industries. So I'm excited I get to, one day I'm talking to a bank, the next day I'm talking to a hospital, the next day I'm talking to schools. It's it's very fulfilling in that respect. I'm very lucky.
And in doing so, there are so many more people than just Celeste and I that can confirm you are a real person, Alex.
Thank you very much.
It's been such a pleasure.
I have an AI version of myself.
Oh my gosh, seriously?
Of course
I should
you
have brought it
would.
on.
Yeah. But we've really appreciated your time
been
today,
great.
Alex, and thanks very much for talking to us.
Yeah, thank you very much
Thank
for having
you.
me.
You've been listening to The Future Of, a podcast recorded on Wajak Bujar and powered by Curtin University. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it. And if you want to hear from more experts, stay up to date by following us on your favourite podcast app. Bye for now.